That brings us to item number 15, which is actions necessary and appropriate for matters discussed in executive session. I think we only had one item, item 3A, that we need a motion on. Do I have a motion? Ms. Hutchison.
I move that we approve the selected employment items as shown as in Exhibit A.
Have a second. Ms. Hammond seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. That passes unanimously. That brings us to item number 16, which is the approval of the proposed 2017-2018 calendar shown in Exhibit D. Do I have a motion? Mr. Haltwanger.
Mr. Gate, I make a motion that we approve the proposed 2017-2018 calendar found in Exhibit D.
We have a second. Ms. Hutchison seconds. Any discussion? Ms. Hammond, and I was going to ask Mr.
Yes,
Bounds if he had any other.
I just had a question but you go ahead first.
Is there a question?
Well, the question I was going to ask is, I know that we had our first reading on this last time, I believe, or was this our first?
I thought this was first.
This is,
No, this is for
the only
approval.
action.
Yes, sir.
Are there any changes from last time?
There are no changes, and we received no comment from the field indicating that there was any changes necessary.
Right. And I will share with the board, I had a couple of folks that contacted me. I contacted Mr. Bounds and got back with him, but at the end of the day, we're controlled by the legislation that's out there about when we can start school. We have a number of days we have to attend of 180 days, as Mr. Bounds so ably describes as a zero-sum game. So with that, with holidays and makeup days built in the calendar, it's a good calendar, but it has a relatively late ending date in some people's view. But anyway, no change from last time, and it had a lot of input from the community to get to this point.
Yes, sir. It's a late starting date because we can't start until the third Monday in August, and which forces a late ending date. There's lots of discussion going on across the state from other districts trying to see if there might be something that they can do to modify the start date either to an earlier date in August or to get an exception. I've been told that the issue is that this is actually in legislation, so it would require a proviso or change in law to make that modification. There was some hope that the Department of Education might be able to modify the start date, but that's up until this point has not been possible.
Ms. Hammond.
My question, I think you answered it, but I'd kind of like to know the process. I know in the past, sometimes teachers are given, they're given some selections, and then they turn it in to their principal. Do we still do that in the beginning to come to this? And I know that we are in that boundary of legislature.
Yes, ma'am.
I understand that, and you're right about, they told us at the legislative convention how some areas of our state want it early and they're trying to get some leeway there. But my big question is, in our process, do we still get that input as much as we can?
Yes, ma'am. We include the teacher forum, the superintendent's faculty advisory, which is our teachers. We include our parent advisory in the process and our support employees as well. And so we try to get as much feedback as we can. And this is actually version D that we went through and got input several times over a period of time from all those folks. One of the things that drives the calendar, in fact, we could start as early as the 21st, but our teachers have been very firm that they want a Wednesday as the start date for that first week because they don't want a full week the first week. So that's one of their criteria that seems to be non-negotiable for teachers.
That is so important. I would agree as a teacher. It sounds kind of simple to you, but it's so good not to have that full week so that you get all your things ready, because that's a big deal. The only other question, Mr. Gant, if I could, I see we have our possible severe weather makeup days down there, which is good to have those, so hopefully we don't have to use them, but if we do, I was going to ask about this year with Matthew. Do we know if any, we've made up some of those, hadn't we? We've already made up 2 of them. And do we have to, has the legislature, I didn't see where they've forgiven any, since a lot of us missed them. Do we know yet? our
Our
teachers?
understanding is that, the law is we have to make up three.
Three.
And, I mean, I think the law is very clear on that. We were told from the get-go by Governor
Yeah, when
Haley.
she
and
let us all out those days.
we had to make up, we were going to make them up.
I got
We've
you.
made up two, and depending on how the
Winter
winter weather season goes, we'll decide the date of the
Okay.
third makeup day. But
So we
will
hadn't
make it.
decided that yet.
Well, we have several dates in our calendar, but
It's-
it would depend on if we have any more interruptions or not, which day or days we might use.
Thanks.
Ms. Hutchinson?
I hope this isn't something that y'all talked about last week or the last meeting and I missed it. But I see that our last, June 11th is Staff Development Teacher Workday, and it's because the school ending is until June 8th. But the problem that I see is that it's just one day, providing we don't have any other, we don't even have severe makeup days after that. And so for those families who take a full week of vacation, most of the rentals are from a Saturday to Saturday or Sunday to Sunday. Most of them are Saturday to Saturday. So for some of those families, it would make some of those teachers miss 3 days at least of their vacation. Was there any talk about moving or changing the calendar to prevent the teachers from having to come back for the 11th?
Yes, ma'am, we did look at that, and it's not a professional development day, it's a teacher workday to wrap up the year, so we obviously wouldn't miss any professional development, and principals will be giving the latitude as long as their teachers have made up those hours to allow the teachers and done all their work. They maybe do it on a Saturday, or even on that Saturday, to make sure that all the work is done and the school is closed out appropriately. But really, when you looked at the calendar, and even the teachers, we talked a lot about that with the teachers, they felt that if you moved it back to that Friday, that would mean that it's even more compressed during the school year, and they just wouldn't get any break at all. And so they felt that was, the worst of the evils that they had. So they've reluctantly supported that Monday, understanding that there might be some latitude should they need to get out of town a little bit early, as long as they get their work done.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question? Seeing none, we've had a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the 2017-2018 calendar shown in Exhibit D, please raise your hand. And that passes unanimously. That brings us to our first reading, approval of proposed revisions to Board Policy IKD Honor Rolls shown in Exhibit E. And I'm going to call on Dr. Melton to update us from our last discussion of this.
Thank you, Chairman Gann. Board members, if you'll join me with Exhibit E, you're going to see some revisions from the November 14th meeting. We did, just as you requested, we took the policy that was revised back to our secondary principals. And by secondary, I mean our intermediate principals, our middle school principals, and our high school principals. I am proud to say that they are unified with the request that you're going to be seeing tonight, looking at what they believe can be motivational to our students, but also inspirational to some students that may need a little bit of support, while also upholding our academic rigor that we have in place in School District 5. So if you'll notice, especially paragraph 3, this is where the bulk of the changes have occurred for your review tonight for our first reading. You will see that the 90 is in place, as was previously, to be considered honor roll. But what you're going to see that's different this time is we're going to consider this, or recommending for your consideration, this to be called the A honor roll. Because if you'll remember, the state uniform grading scale has now changed from a 90 to 100 to be an A. The previous policy had honor roll beginning at a 90, so that is a consistent numerical value that you see there. Following that, the next sentence outlines what is going to be new for your consideration. We're looking to have the creation of maintaining an 80 for all subjects or above for a student to be considered to be eligible for the AB honor roll. That's something new to School District 5, but our principals felt that would be a great compromise to add some more students to the honor roll, and also to hopefully motivate them towards their academic efforts they're trying to apply towards. So, Mr. Gant, those are the major revisions that you see from the discussion from the first time, so I'll pause for any questions that you all may have.
Okay. Ms. Hutchinson?
Dr. Melton, can you explain how the averages will be determined for the A honor roll and the AB honor roll. Does that, and also, does that mean that students have to get all A's to be on the A honor roll and all A's and B's? And just explain that process for
Sure,
us.
sure. To be considered for the A honor roll, it has to be a 90 for all subjects or higher. So yes, ma'am, to be considered the A honor roll, all content area, all subjects have to be considered an A, a 90 or higher. The AB honor roll would be an average of 80 for each of the subjects or higher. So you could have a combination of 80s and up. So you may have one B and the rest are A's. You are still qualified then for the AB honor roll because you do have one B. If it's anything lower than an 80, you would not be included with the AB honor roll because that would be beneath the all-subject average of being an 80. So if you had a 79 or 78 in one of your classes that you've taken, you would not be considered for the AB honor roll because you have one class. One of your classes is below the 90 or the 80 threshold of having a B. Does that answer your question?
Well, it does, but it makes me have another question,
Okay.
actually. So if you have a student who makes all A's and then one C, I'm not sure mathematically how that would turn out, but I doubt it would be less than 80.
Right. We do not average each of the classes together. Each class is considered an individual grade. So how we record that is if a child has taken, let's say, 6 classes, and you do have 5 A's and the 6th class is a C. That student would not be on the AB honor roll nor the A honor roll because you do have a C recorded on record. So it's not an average of all the classes together. Each one is a standalone subject that's an independent grade. Is that something you'd like for us to consider revising?
Well, I'm just thinking that where we have maintained an average of 90, that it really could be interpreted as someone having all A's and a C. And I just wonder if we would avoid some future problems if we were able to clarify that the student had to have all A's or all A's and B's. Because
So-
when I looked at it, I thought it was the average of all the
Of all
grades.
subjects. So perhaps if we were to say each subject rather
each.
than all?
Yeah.
Would
Yeah.
that be clear for,
Instead of saying
Say
average,
each subject
Saying
needs to
average.
be.
Take average out.
Yeah, each subject.
take average out, Mr. Haltowanger?
I think so, yeah, I think so.
Ms. Hutchison, your reaction to that?
I think that's fine, but, I would really leave it up to the professionals for y'all to word this to, I think Mr. Hockelonger is right, but I would prefer to have y'all come up with what you think is going to be the appropriate wording. If you take it back to your team and say, will this work?
Okay.
If we say, something other than average, how can we make sure that it's very clear that it is all A's or all A's and B's?
Okay. This is helpful for us because we read it with an educational lens. We need you to help us see it from a community and parental lens. So we appreciate that feedback.
And let me call on Ms. Hammond, then we'll come to Mr. White. How about that?
Well, and mine was just a comment on Ms. Hutchinson's. I guess I saw it as your eye as a teacher. I would know that to be on the A honor roll, it had to be all A's. But I'm in that venue every day. But I do think she makes a good point, where we could say a student must maintain an average in each subject as of a 90 or whatever above. But what my question was, when we go down to what you were talking about, sort of to give an incentive to the kids to make an AB honor roll, I think that's important. The only thing, I still have problems with that 80 being a B, because, it used to be 85. And so I want to continue with the rigor psychologically too. But I would just say as a teacher, if you're a parent, they're not, I'm teaching every day, there are a lot of parents not happy with the 80, even though that's now a B. For all of these teachers with these kids that have made it through 8th grade, that 80 to them is a C. So I didn't know, I don't guess we could go against we couldn't make it the 85. I don't guess that would not be fair with this new thing that's come down from the.
We did discuss the recommendations that we had last time with you all on November the 14th, And some of our principals actually researched, well, what might the National Honor Society say? What might National Beta Club say?
Right.
And our findings were, if we were to go with an 86 or an 87 to be considered School District 5 honor roll, you could potentially have students in National Honor Societies that did not qualify for School District 5 honor roll.
Yeah.
So we felt like it was more sound practice.
It is.
Understanding
I'm
we're
sure it
still
is.
calibrating our understanding of a B is a B, not a B as an 80 versus an 87.
Mm-hmm.
So we're still trying to make sure that our teachers can determine what a B is, not necessarily the value, but what the workload looks like to have a B work.
And we did discuss that we
Mm-hmm.
now can, if I'm the teacher, I can make to get to that 80 work that maybe it used to be an 85's worth. It's just what we're calling it. So I can see that.
Okay.
And then I think it's very, very good that you've put in no student who is enrolled for fewer than 6 blocks is eligible for the honor roll. Because a lot of kids just take, especially their senior year, they'll take a couple, 2 or 3 things because they've got enough subjects, and then they're not working as hard for that all those days. So I think it's well thought out. I just wanted to throw out and see what y'all's reasoning was about the 80.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. White?
I was just going to make a suggestion along Ms. Hutchison's request, but maybe rather than the word average, you have a minimum of
Okay.
90 in all your classes to be on the A honor roll, and then you have to have a minimum of 80 in each of your classes to be on the AB honor roll. But y'all take it back and see what you think works. But I think that's Ms. Hutchison, what you're saying is you don't go below. If you average something, you'll go below if you got high and low grades. But this way, you can't go below the floor.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Good. I think that's good.
And this is first reading, so we have time for you all to have another staffing of this and think about it. I'm going to throw another little wrinkle. You mentioned from your education view. I'll give you one that's totally not in that realm, but it just popped in my mind. What if you had a student that made all Bs, then be qualified under this to be in the AB honor roll? Did you all give any thought to possibly having a B honor roll?
We did, and I think there's a lot of principals behind me. They may be nodding their heads because they remember this discussion. I won't look behind me because we all may break into laughter. But we tossed around all different kinds of names, from merit roll to distinguished, all kinds of different names, what we could call it. We're just trying to simplify it, that AB would be inclusive of, a student may have all A's but 1 B, but that student is now on the AB honor roll. A student could potentially have all B's and still be on the B honor roll. So you all may recommend to us, okay, let's have a third layer. And if the third layer were to be all B's, then we could certainly add that as another note of distinguished accolades to honor a student with. We were just trying to simplify things a little bit with A and AB, but we certainly do not want to confuse anyone. I'm fortunate that our principals make sure that when they make presentations, it isn't just on a program of an agenda for parents and community members to get to see. They or a staff member are intentional to explain what the criteria is. So they may explain something like that. Students are on the AB honor roll and then explain the criteria based on the language we have here in policy. So that is something we've discussed. We're open to adding a third layer to it if you all would recommend that. But I think that we just need to think through the specifics because it's going to happen. So it's better that we think about it beforehand than us get on the backside of the policy and try to implement and then discover problems that we have.
Well, and I love the incentive for a student, the encouragement to strive, and maybe, so you had a student made all B's, that's great grades to start with.
Right.
And they'd be on the AB honor roll, and they'd say, oh my gosh, I'm going to get in that A category to legitimize this a little bit more. So, it's a good problem to be discussing, but I personally would like for you all to staff it and think about, as you already have, with these other suggestions, and then when you come back to the
And Mr. Gann, if I may add, many of our principals had their laptops out during this discussion, and they were doing a query of data. If we were to have 80 and above, how many students would we recognize as opposed to if we have 90 and above? So I am proud to sit here and say that our principals are student-centered and making sure that we're reaching decisions together based on what we believe is best for children and their academic success.
Mr. Gant,
yes, ma'am.
can I, to your point, I want to just tell you right out of the mouth of students, these principals really know kids. I promise you, they would be so proud. You need to leave that name A.B. honor roll. I promise you. I'll have kids, we give out interims today. I made all A's and B's. You can look at that, and it's all B's with 1 A. But it's all A's and B's, because that's a fact. So I think to say the A.B. honor roll, even if they make all B's, they're very proud that they can call it the A.B. honor roll. It's psychological.
And I can tell you from this board, we'd like to recognize all of them. They're all trying hard. So the nights that you all want to bring them all, we recognize them, we'll do that too.
Golden
'cause
rulers
we
for
have a great
everyone.
celebration. Mr. Cates.
Thank you for your work on this. I know you met with the principals. I just want to make sure that as this is presented, that it does meet all of their concerns and addresses any concerns. I do think it's important that we recognize our students for positive achievements. We see plenty of news about students that are struggling and when they're in the wrong place at the wrong time, doing the wrong thing. So anything we can do to recognize their efforts and advancement. Plus, I think we do have to recognize in District 5, our rigor is important, and a B is an earned grade and not a given grade. As a parent of a 10th grader, but those will be good, right? Thank you for your hard work.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Ms. Hutchinson.
Mr. Gant, I see in the memo that, that we're recommending that this be moved to the second reading. Dr. Melton, did you still want us to do that?
I'll leave that to you all. I mean, we've had the discussion. This is first reading. Consider if you would like to bring it back for another before we actually go to.
Where did you see that?
Second reading.
It's on,
On the memo for the-
on the memo, right where it says the recommendation. And when I saw that, it made me wonder, when do you plan to implement this? And is that part of the reason that you want us to move to the second reading? Are you going to implement it? Is it effective for this fall?
Well, currently, we've applied the current policy, of course, which is 90 and higher, that you have included with your packet under Exhibit E of 90 and higher being recognized for honor rolls. So we could actually recognize this at the end of the first semester, getting ready for the second semester, if that's something that we move quickly on. Principals have not asked that we move quickly. They prefer that we make thoughtful decisions to do it well the first time rather than rushed the first time. So we could wait to implement this effective for the fall of 17-18 school year, or if it's ready for second semester, we could certainly do that. Now that we've canceled the meeting for January the 9th, I think that would pose difficulty getting everything ready for that point. So now that we have a different schedule, it may be more beneficial to delay and start this effective for the 17-18 school year for continuity purposes. But if we did apply it for this calendar year, we have been recognizing students making 90 and higher, so it would just be casting the net a little bit wider during those third and fourth quarter ceremonies that would include students with 80 and above. So we could go either direction.
Mr. Gant, I would really like to see it be able to be done in January, just to reckon, if they've done the groundwork for it, if we could possibly do that. I mean, I don't know if we can do it with one reading.
What I'm hearing Dr. Melton saying is that you all will be stressed to do it with the meeting on the 23rd, but it sounds like there probably ought to be some more discussion unless the board is.
I'm happy with what they have.
I am too.
I'd vote tonight on what they have.
Mr. Gant, may I find when the second quarter ends? If someone, Mr. Bounds, do you happen to have that handy? The second quarter, just for point of information? That may help with the decision. I don't want to press you all. I'd rather give you information than making a quick decision.
They've done their due diligence.
If anyone behind me has a laptop, can I quickly?
Mr. Gant, my thoughts I think they've really thought this out, and I think it's student-driven and student-friendly. And I'd hate to wait till the next year. They've already talked about the 90 average and the AB.
Man, we can always come back to it. We've given them enough guidance on the average
Right.
question, so
Could prove
They-
it with the adjustments. that we've
let them
Yes, put that
approve it the way
in.
they brought it, and if we want to tinker with it next year, we can do it next year.
So, Mr. Gant, the second quarter ends on January the 13th. So then recognitions wouldn't occur until a week to two after that. Ms. Stowers' question is perhaps the confusion is about where we are at this point. We've considered this first reading after having discussion on November the 14th. So our request is to move forward to second reading when we meet again January the 23rd would be our recommendation, unless you all were to have, if you would like for us to take it back for more revisions, for you to see it one more time before we try to move for approval, we could. but the second quarter period ends on January the 13th on a Friday.
So we missed the second quarter as a school to implement this, but what I hear you saying is January 23rd, you're still on track to bring back the revisions. Now, if it will help you, I think the will of the board is to approve this as you've submitted with the changes that have been suggested tonight. So if that is something you all can work with, and then we can always come back to any board policy and revise it if you all staff it and decide you need it a different way.
Quite frankly, it would help us because today being Monday, the rest of the week, we have so many activities going on in our schools. We do not have our principals scheduled to come in anymore this week.
They don't need to
And then
meet
some are taking off Monday and Tuesday as 240 employees to use for
Right.
vacation leave. I'll be negligent to make decisions without all of our principals involved with this decision. So I would
Okay.
prefer have an opportunity for them to weigh in and help make these clarifications because they're the ones on the direct line of communication with parents at the first wave. So with your permission, I would like to request that we just move forward with second reading at the next time on the
At the next
23rd
meeting.
of
Okay.
January.
All right. So we've had a motion, we've had a second, we've had discussion, we've made suggestions, and we're still talking about first reading. So all those in favor, please raise your hand.
I didn't think there was a motion.
We did not get a motion?
No.
Must be time for Christmas break.
No, it wasn't a motion.
All right, I will entertain a motion, and I'll look to Ms. Hutchison to help me with that motion. Ms. Hutchison.
Yes, I move that we approve the proposed revisions to Board Policy IKD honor rolls, which is shown in Exhibit E.
Okay, we have a second. Ms. Baumgartner seconds. Any further discussion? Now, for a little clarification from me, you all would incorporate the prior discussion words that we talked about into this, and that's not a problem. Do we need to amend this motion to say that? Or would you like to amend your motion to say, to
I
incorporate our?
would, thank you, I
Okay.
appreciate that.
I want you to start over with your motion.
Okay, I'll just start all over. That's a good idea. I move that we approve the Board Policy IKD honor rolls with the suggestions discussed by board members. Does that do
Which
that?
one?
I think-
Ed's word? Of
With,
just-
with,
I think we
with
had
the
several, I
one
believe.
inclusion
change,
of minimum, replacing
yes.
average with minimum.
Right, okay. That's
Okay,
all
I'll
the change
redo
we're
that.
making.
Did you show any
correct?
others, Dr. Melton?
What I had, Mr. Gant, was replacing average with minimum, and what I also had was potentially replacing all with each class, rather than all to take away the appearance, so we were averaging all together. They would be standing alone as isolated numbers, averages.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
Just so
Ms.
it's clear.
Stowers?
So Ms. Hutchison's motion is to approve this. Okay, that's fine. And that includes the two items that you just mentioned, Dr. Melton.
Thank you.
We butchered that up pretty bad, but it is close to Christmas holidays and a little break. Obviously, we need. So we have a motion. It's been, we need a second. Mr. White, any further discussion? I don't see anybody, so let's all in favor, please raise your hand. That passes unanimously. And thank you very much. That brings us to item number 18, which is well in order, and that is to adjourn for the evening. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Ms. Baumgartner,
I move that we adjourn.
have a second? Mr. White? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you very much. That passed unanimously, and thank you all for being here tonight.
We all gonna get sick after being in here for 2 hours.